Okay, so our next guy is Zach Cregger. Hi, Zach. Come on in, take a seat. Hi, guys. So, Zach, we need a hit. Show us what you got. Okay, so the story is that in the middle of the night, 17 kids get up and walk out their houses and vanish into the night, never to be seen again. Wow, that's interesting. And the hook is that all of these kids belong to one class, and only the teacher and one other student are left behind. And we'll break up the story so it focuses on one character at a time and just follows their journey through a given day. And then they cross paths and intersect each time. So we slowly unravel the mystery behind what's been going on here as it goes on. That sounds incredible. So this is a mystery thriller sort of thing, yeah? Well, more of a horror. Damn, that's good. And also a comedy. Wait, what? A horror comedy? How does that work? Ah, don't worry about it. And we'll also frame it as a true story. And is it a true story? Well, no, but we'll just say it is. Um, okay. Hey, it worked for Paranormal Activity, and look how well that did. Fine. Who are you thinking of attaching to this? Well, Josh Brolin and Alden Ehrenreich. Nice. Who else? Julia Garner. Okay, up and coming. Anyone else? Justin Long. Now you're talking. Always a good pick for a horror movie. Well, he'll be in it just for a few minutes. So it's a horror slash thriller slash mystery slash comedy with Justin Long appearing briefly alongside Josh Brolin and Alden Ehrenreich. Yeah, just think. The audience would be like, what? Right. So where does the horror element come into it? Well, the main characters will be like chased around and terrorized by some demonic looking people, and then we'll just throw in some jump scares of weird old women into it. Well, that sounds like it'll work. And the comedy? Well, the weird old woman will be the main scary character, but also will be really cartoonish and over the top in a lot of her scenes. A bit like the Joker. Also, we'll drag out a lot of the scenes, a lot of the sequences as well. So it goes on and on and on and on to the point where people just burst out laughing. I'm really not sure about this. Like I said, we need a hit. This will deliver, right? Absolutely. And just to make sure, I'll even direct it. Oh, fine, whatever. Just anything to get you out of my office now. Cool, thanks. Do you really think this is going to work? Hey, the mystery angle works. Let's just plaster that all over the promotional material and just focus on the horror element. That will get people in through the door. I mean, who cares what they think afterwards, right? So Weapons is a movie released in 2025 starring Julia Garner, Josh Brolin, Alden Ehrenreich and Austin Abrams, and written and directed by Zach Cregger. And the first thing to point out is that this review will be a spoiler-free review, mainly because of the mystery element behind this movie. So there's going to be no spoilers and nothing to ruin the ending of this movie. So as you may have guessed based on all the promotional material around this movie, including the poster, is that the premise of this movie is ultimately at 2:17 a.m. on one morning, 17 children, all belonging to one classroom, got out of bed and walked out of their houses into the night, never to be seen again. Nobody knows why, nobody knows who's behind it all, but the main suspicion is surrounding the teacher who was left behind, Justine, and one other student who was left behind called Alex. These two are the only people of that class who were left behind. And initially, the movie starts off with a narration about, or from a young girl, that explains the build up to the story, explains that obviously the fact these children went missing, but then also there's some events that have taken place afterwards. And this movie does actually take place a period of time after that initial disappearance. And it all starts together where you start to see that the town have turned against that teacher, and there's a level of suspicion that she knows more than what she's saying. And it also explains that the police are essentially stumped. They have no answer to what has happened and no explanation behind it. They interview the teacher, they interview the remaining student, and that's essentially it. That's where they're at, and they can't do anything more. It's then when the story gets interesting, because it then starts to break up into individual chapters, focusing in on four or five main characters. Now, the movie basically chooses a given day or a couple of days, and it follows each individual character throughout their activities or their journey throughout those days. Eventually, they start to intersect each other, and that's we then start to take on the other person's journey. And slowly, the mystery behind the whole story does start to unravel until we get to the final person and everything is all revealed. And it's a really original way of telling a mystery story. Now, going into this movie, I thought it was a horror movie, and realistically, it isn't. It is a thriller, it's a mystery thriller with horror elements attached to it. And this movie does do those horror elements and those mystery elements really, really well. The horror elements really are done through changing the focus between a wide angle shot and then a POV to really bring that claustrophobic feeling into it. You do get a couple of jump scares that seem a bit cheap, but overall, the general atmosphere and the build up of tension is fantastic and something you would expect in any normal horror movie. The acting performances in this movie are also absolutely fantastic. Josh Brolin and Julia Garner do steal the show, particularly Julia Garner, because she is really the main character, and a very conflicted one as well. She is the teacher, Justine, who was left behind, and the whole town has effectively turned against her, accusing her of being either behind the disappearances or knowing more information than she's letting on in the first place. There's calls for her to be almost put in jail and interrogated and forced to confess to what's happened. There's other people that have she's just basically become a social pariah in the community. And, even to the point where she's just terrorized by phone calls and people writing messages on her car, and all of these bits all just contributing towards her feeling victimized at the end of it. But at the same time, she's also being told by people close to her that you're not the victim here. The kids are the victim. You're just taking on the victim mentality when you shouldn't be. And all of that together is you just feel the weight on top of her. And she does an absolutely fantastic job of portraying that as well. Josh Brolin plays almost the dad, like a bit like Hugh Jackman's character in Prisoners, where he's the dad who's desperate to find the answer to where his son went, not why, but where he's gone, just to try and find him again. And he does some investigation work himself. He does approach the police, gets frustrated with their lack of movement, so decides to take matters in his own hands. And it does sort of make for very interesting viewing, because piece by piece, just almost like a trail of breadcrumbs are laid, throughout each individual character's story to unravel that mystery sort of a bit more, until you get to the very end and then everything is all revealed. But by that point, you've already got the groundwork behind it just to almost make that extra step yourself and know the answer, just not the full story. And the thing that this movie does fantastically is that it almost solves the mystery halfway through for you. But then it just adds that unsettling feel behind it, that there's something more at play. And it's absolutely fantastic the way it does that as well. And the crazy thing about this movie is that normally in a horror movie where you see something scary on screen, the more you look at it, the more used you become to it, you become desensitized to that. But in this one, that isn't the case. You can stare at the sort of horror threat in front of you and never actually get used to it. It just, if anything, unsettles you even more the more you look at it. There is some really good pacing in this movie as well, partly because of it being broken up into individual stories. So whilst you do see the same things play out again, it's all done from a different perspective. So it does keep you engaged into it. So it does do a really good job in sort of just pacing the story out. And yeah, it is quite slow in just revealing, more of the mystery. But it does it in a really good way to the point where you are still engaged in it. But this movie really isn't a perfect movie. There are some flaws to it, albeit fairly minor ones. And it mainly is down to, I don't know whether it's intentional or not, but there are elements to this movie or sequences in this movie that do come across quite comedic. And I mean, to the point where when I was watching it in the cinema, most of the audience burst out laughing in several scenes. And it's because it's just drawn out to the point where it becomes a little bit ridiculous as to how often it's repeated. A key example of this would be right in the very beginning, to avoid spoilers, be right at the very beginning of the movie where you see the kids leave the house and they all run with their arms behind their back, or arms out to the side, sort of running in a identical way. And you do get the point, like seeing them all leaving seemingly voluntarily with no sort of force used against them. They're all just leaving the house and running off, and it's quite unsettling to watch. And you get the point that the movie is trying to make by showing all of the kids do it one by one, again and again and again. It's showing actually, yes, all of them have done it in the exact same way. But you get that point after 4 or 5. You don't need to see all 17. And in the end, it just becomes so over the top that you can't help but find it funny. And that does happen a few more times down the line, even to the point where you get to the climax of the movie and a lot of people are just laughing at just how ridiculous the whole scenario seemed. The best way of explaining the climax of this movie, to try and illustrate my point about the comedic or unintentional comedic side of it coming out, is essentially the threat of the movie, or the main antagonist in the movie, is defeated, but it's all whilst everyone is minding their own business. So what you have is good versus evil taking place, the battle basically of good versus evil taking place whilst Larry is mowing his grass or mowing his garden, or the family next door just sitting down for dinner, and everything sort of goes through, like the battle takes place going through their living room and destroying everything. So whilst they're still sat at the table, and it's something you'd expect in basic any sort of comedy disaster movie, really. And that for me, I think, just ruins the tone of it, because that tone was absolutely fantastic up until those points. And the same could be said from one particular actor's performance in this. Basically every single time they're on screen, this character, without again trying to spoil anything, this character does have a dual role of a good and a bad side. But it's the good side is just so over the top and cartoonish that again you can't help but laugh at it. Even just some exaggerated body movements as well. It's just, it all seems very Jim Carrey-esque. And that, yeah, again, that just takes it away. But, you know, up until then, it's an absolutely superb film so far, until those points. But overall, this is an excellent film. It is one that is just completely original in it, the way it delivers the story, splitting everything up into every single individual character's journeys and seeing how they intersect and the backstory behind how they came to be in that place at that time. That's always an interesting way of showing a plot take place. When you add the mystery element into it and seeing it slowly unravel throughout each individual chapter, all of that is absolutely fantastic. But the unintentional, I think it's unintentional. I can't see why you would insert a comedy element into a horror thriller. But I personally think that it's an unintentional consequence of just drawing out some of the sequences for far too long. And because of that, it does take the atmosphere out of the movie. It does take you out of the movie slightly. And overall, I'll give it 3 stars. So that was my review of Weapons. What do you guys think about it? Have you seen it? Whatever you guys thought, please pop it in the comment section below. Thank you very much for watching this video. As always, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I will be back with another video shortly, but until then, you guys take it easy and I'll catch you on the next one.